Morning to you. My name is Daniel Wahomen. Welcome to Sports Check. It is another Monday morning where we're going to have conversation about what's going on in the world of sport and also what's happening in the news. Just an outlook of what we are going to be having today. Well, first, let's talk about what happened over the weekend and was broadcast on KBC Channel 1. We had what became known as the Kalle Rovanperä Show, aka Rally Estonia, winning 13 stages. The last time anybody won 13 stages in a World Rally Championship event was 18 years ago. That was Sebastian Loeb. So we're going to be giving you some of the highlights from that event. Daniel Mwendwa is in Machakos, and Football Kenya Federation and the Machakos County are having a partnership that is going to be announced today. Then also remember, August is going to be school games, the national school games taking place in Kakamega. So a lot of inspection work is going to be done over the next few weeks by the secretaries from the different regions. And we'll be speaking to Quinto Omusugu, who is the secretary of the Kenya Secondary School Sports Association Western Region, about the preparation. Kakamega High School is the primary host of those events, and that's going to be taking place from the 5th to the 14th of August. And immediately after that, they travel to Rwanda for the East African School Games. And what about darts at professional level? We're going to be having a conversation about that because we've got a franchise in Kenya of the African Darts Series. Some of you call it the pub game, but for others, it is serious business. But at the moment, Kenya is hosting the World, and this is at the World Rugby Under 20 Trophy. And this is the pathway to the World Rugby Under 20 Championship. So you can imagine 8 nations all participating here. 2 of the nations are from the continent, Kenya and Zimbabwe, and we've got representation from them. And that's the first conversation that we are going to be having this morning. It's all about developing rugby in Africa. Remember, our hashtag is SportsCheckKBC, and our Twitter handle is at KBC Channel 1. Our sign language interpreter within this first hour is Lucy Maura. Now, time for me to introduce our guests, because already 2 match days have been played at the Nyayo National Stadium at the World Rugby Under 20 Trophy. And the people who are organizing it, the people who've got to work hard to ensure that every 5 days you get the best of rugby from the under 20s. Talking about 18 and 19-year-old. So on my immediate left, we've got Moses Mukabane. He's the director of 15s rugby at the Kenya Rugby Union. And on my far left from Zimbabwe, we've got the president of Zimbabwe Rugby, and he's also the treasurer of Rugby Africa, Aaron Jani. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And, you know, for Moses, let me start with you, because it's 14 years since Kenya hosted this global championship. It was known as the Junior World Rugby Trophy, then renamed the World Rugby Under 20. For that 14 years, what's been, you know, the story for the union to host the world again?
I think it's an amazing opportunity that the union has gotten to have this tournament back in Africa, and specifically now in Kenya. The past 14 years, I think we've been having a good chance at it. We went to Brazil. It went to Brazil. The other, I think the last time it was there. For it to come to Kenya, I think it is such a big advantage for us, and the trust that World Rugby has with Kenya Rugby, and it's a good chance for us. And I think we've done an amazing job, and we having the day 3 tomorrow, and we're really excited about it.
Oh yes, and day 3 is going to be live on KBC Channel 1 and our sister station Y254. So the 10 a.m. and the 12 p.m. matches will be live on Channel 1 at 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. Y254. And Aaron, you know, for you, I mean, from the Rugby Africa perspective, Kenya is now hosting a second event at the high level for the under 20s. What's been that experience for Rugby Africa?
Well, I think the experience is twofold. Number one, the fact that Kenya is hosting the tournament means that they have an automatic qualification into the tournament, which means that we could field 2 teams into the tournament. And then number 2, it's the confidence that has been placed on Rugby Africa and on Kenya, on our abilities to be able to hold such high-level tournaments, which is very, very commendable.
And, you know, for us to host this, first of all, was the African, under 20s championship. And from the Rugby Africa perspective, what is it that you look for anybody who places a bid and says, I want to host this? What do you check out?
So what we've done is we've come up with a criteria where there's bid forms that are actually filled in by the country that is hoping to be hosting that particular tournament. And in these, there are certain boxes that we need to tick to ensure that the tournament can be held at a very high level. And obviously, Kenya has done so in many occasions, and did so on this occasion. They ticked the boxes, and that's why we held the tournament here.
Moses, the experience for the union, first of all, having to tick the boxes, and then now you had World Rugby come in with their another page of more boxes to be ticked. What's been that process, especially when they come to inspect facilities, the logistics, things like, even people at times we take it for granted, things like medical equipment and the safety of everyone who's here.
Yeah. So first of all, just post-COVID, COVID really brought everything to a standstill in terms of sports, and having just the mandate to have one of the first big events in the country post-COVID, it's really been a lot for us to do. And first of all, hosting birthdays, early in the year really gave us a good stepping stone to, start ticking all the boxes and making sure that everything is in line. And I think we've done very well in terms of just organizing everything. And as you have just mentioned, medical equipment, we have very good partners who have come on board, as well as just to ensure that everything is working as per World Rugby, recommendations.
Now, the other one is the kind of support you've received from the government, because everyone, we like asking in terms of specific numbers, because the moment we saw Talanta Hela on the Chipu jersey, we simply knew there was support coming through from the State Department for Sport. Just give us a background on that.
I think first I would just like to appreciate a lot the support that we received from the government. Talanta Hela has come in actually it's experiencing the objectives of Talanta Hela, just to bring in the aspect of monetizing the sports in our young guys. So taking on this young team of under 20, I think it is we are really having a good objective in our young guys, bring them the future into sports. And the support that we received from the government, I think we're really happy, and we hope that this will continue even in other sports. And with the engagements that we're having with government, we're really having a good way forward in the way sports will go. Yeah.
And Aaron, I want to bring in this, because whenever you've got to host an event in Africa, you really cannot put the government, a lot of support has to come in from the governments. How is Rugby Africa working to ensure that this support comes in? Because, for example, you are the next host for the Olympic. Zimbabwe are hosting the Olympic qualifiers. So how do you work to ensure that this happens?
Yes, that's true. So the first half, what we've done as a new administration is that we've been setting up our structures, and one of those structures is the governance structure. And on top of that, our president has been, heading that governance structure, and has been going through to most of the countries, and indeed he's been to Tunisia, and he will be coming to Kenya this weekend. And the idea really is to engage the governments and highlight the importance of rugby, the importance of sport in terms of the development, and in terms of the interaction between countries, for the good of the sport. And so he's been very focused on doing those tours to these countries, and his main aim is to engage governments and see how we can partner with them in terms of resources, because resources are the biggest challenge that we are facing as rugby unions in Africa.
And it is at that point I want to bring in, because we want to take a look at how to develop this game. South Africa, in a world of their own, Namibians tend to rub off that. Zimbabwe also has got that close relationship. But first of all, how is now the development program being run at the continental level?
Yes, it's a major challenge. In fact, we were having a discussion with Moses about this issue of development. We've recognized and we agreed that our biggest problem is game time. we need to get game time, under our belts so that we can narrow the gap between Africa and the rest of the world. But for us to be able to get that game time, we need resources. And this is where the biggest challenges come through. Obviously, we are very close to South Africa, Kenya and Zimbabwe. And this is where we see where we can get valuable game time. And indeed, you've seen us enter into the Mzansi Challenge, where we are trying to get as much game time as possible. But the funding models have not really been as good as we would like them to be, as sustainable as we would like them to be. So we are still continuing to talk about how we can better get game time within Africa at an affordable price. That is the biggest challenge that we are facing at the moment. It's resources.
Well, and the Simbas and the Zimbabwe Go Sharks were playing in the Mzansi Challenge, and already 2 seasons played. Actually, for Kenya, 3 seasons played, because I think 10 years ago they also went down and played, and now the last 2 seasons. What's been the experience of Kenya at that level?
I think definitely, as Zani has just mentioned, game time for us, I think, is the major issue. And that opportunity just to be able to play down south really has boosted our game. The experience of our players is expanding. Like this year, we managed to be able to attend a few games, about 4 games, and then we had a game with Zim down in Nakuru. And it was a very good experience for our players, more so even our fans, just getting to get some of the games over, to have an experience of high intensity games being played over and over. And you see, that is really a very good experience for our game. And that is the gap that we are having. We're trying to fill with going down south. Yeah.
And talking about that, one of the things that the first time Kenya played down in the Division 2, that was I think that was 2014. One of the things they kept talking about is the infrastructure. What's being done to get more places where people can play rugby, and such that even injuries don't come that often?
Of course, for us, first, our goal as the union, we are looking at a holistic level. See how we can get better surfaces from primary schools, high schools, and then coming to clubs. Of course, even at club level, we have challenges as well, where with clubs, some of the clubs also even missing to secure playing surfaces, and that's a challenge that we are looking at holistically. And we are also in discussions with government to allocate some of the spaces, probably Kasarani and in Jamhuri, and some areas that our players can have better surfaces to play. And we have also partnered. We are also partnering with some of our corporates to improve the infrastructure in terms of having goalposts in each and every playing surface that we have. And those are some of the initiatives that we're trying to do with our partners, just to ensure that our playing surfaces for players are improved in terms of facility.
And just talk about the experience that you've seen from Zimbabwe in terms of because I'll mention something that was said during the Bates Cup. One fan who understands from Zimbabwe say there is no way we are going to lose. We start playing at primary school. I've lived here long enough to know you start playing in secondary school. So eventually, the infrastructure, we know Zimbabwe has got a very huge rugby heritage. What are some of the lessons that other countries could pick off Zimbabwe?
Okay, so we are very fortunate that we have a very vibrant school rugby culture. So we start off with tag rugby, and then from tag rugby we go into primary school, and it's very, very competitive. And then from the primary school we go into secondary school, and we've made it a tradition that we participate in the Craven Week in South Africa. So we pick our national teams that go and represent us in in South Africa in the Craven Week.
Basically, a school select.
Correct. These are all school select, all age grade rugby, and from there we then select, our under 20s, and then from the under 20s we then proceed to the national teams and to the clubs. So it's been very, very successful in terms of the schools and the clubs. But where we are facing a challenge is bridging the gap between the under 20 and the clubs, because those who don't make the competitive level, either at national or in the first team clubs, they don't have really a place to go. So we need to try and see how we can accommodate them so that they are sort of in an incubation period before they also get an opportunity to get into the national teams and the clubs.
Actually, that's also something that looks like it cuts across even different sports. What's the transition level that you're seeing, especially from secondary schools to club and also to what you'd say national team level, and when you're at age grade and transitioning to the senior forward?
Yeah, I think for us, probably I would like to just start from, the junior levels. Our junior level, the age grade structure wasn't very solid, and that is what we are really trying to beef up, to just make sure that we have some high-level competition at that level, so that from tag rugby, we've done a lot of campaigns all over Kenya to ensure that kids are starting to play at a very young age. And then now the transition from now primary school level to secondary school level, at least we have a competition, the national KBC, and then also we have a competition that is run by the private schools. Yeah, so that whole combination is coming up. But then now, what we are also trying to bring back, we used to have a national select side for the high schools. But then now, I think since it's been 4 years before COVID, then we didn't have that. So we want to bring it back so that we can have these kids probably playing for Craven Week, going down to join Zim in Craven Week. Because what we used to have is an East African kind of competitions that we had select schools that we were competing. So that transition, for me, I think actually it is very key for us. What for Kenya we are really missing, it's the kind of players transitioning from high school. We get maybe about, we can say 70%, 60% transition, getting other players falling off. So we really want to keep these players and make them stay into the game, so that as at least in Kenya we have a league system, that we have clubs which can transition these players from high school, and they get into these clubs and they can incubate there now into the national team. But then now also what we want to improve on is to have also a select side, or like a super series kind of setup that is able to bring all these players from the clubs now to play together, to be able to have a good selection for the national team.
Well, very interesting. Now, so, the other one that I would like to bring in here is how you're working, Aaron, to improve the technical levels. One, of the coaches, the coaching staff, and number two, match officials, because I'll tell you the Kenyan scenario. People, at times, Kenya, if you bring anything to Kenya, we own it. So we've already owned this tournament. We've forgotten that it's World Rugby's tournament being hosted in Kenya. Yes. So people are asking, where is the Kenyan referee?
Yes.
Because we've already owned. But it's actually a real valid question.
Yes.
That where is the Kenyan referee, or do we have to wait for Rasta to come? Rasta to come. Are we developing these people?
Yes. We've actually got a very elaborate program as Rugby Africa, where we do training and education, and every year each union is requested to bring in their requests in terms of what they require in terms of training and education. And part of this is we focus on referees, we focus on coaches, to make sure that every country that is a member of Rugby Africa, has an opportunity to get the infrastructure in terms of those kind of resources for them to be able to perform at the highest level. If you look at our referees, we've got international referees that are performing. I think we've got no less than 3 referees which have been appointed. There's one from Zimbabwe. I think she's quite well known, Precious, who has been officiating in a lot of the other. And there's also some Ugandan referees that are also performing. And our aim is to try and expose them as much as possible. So we are also looking at South Africa, and we are talking to them to see if they can also give us some games where we can officiate as Rugby Africa and as Zimbabwe, so that we get that experience at that high level for us to be able to perform in our own tournaments and make sure we've got our own referees, our own coaches in our own tournaments. So that is really the aim, but it's a process that we are going through, and we hope that we will bridge the gap in the near future.
You know, always, whenever the teams travel to the Mzansi Challenge and come back and the players say, I think we take some things for granted. What have been the learning lessons, especially from the players, when it comes to the laws of the game?
I think the biggest learning that personally when interaction with the players is just the game understanding, that after they come from Mzansi Challenge, they come with a different level of game understanding. In terms of the laws, I think there is just the way the laws are inculcated into the game and practiced. It is more fluid when they come down from there. They have a better understanding of how to apply the laws of the game. And, you know, there are nitty-gritties that, you know, fine skills that we realize, like when the boys came down from South Africa and played Zimbabwe in Nakuru, you could clearly see a difference, because we saw the first game, the way they played, and now having you know, had an experience with the training with the Western Province, with Jerome as our head of program, that experience gave them a better outlook of the game, and you could see how their performance was, and that is the trajectory that we want to set for Kenya, just to have that kind of mindset, going down to Stellenbosch, you know, that kind of experience, going to play Zimbabwe. And I think also Rugby Africa is really encouraging that kind of synergy to ensure that all teams in Africa, especially our relationships with Zimbabwe and South Africa, I think that is the way that we will be able to grow to get into the World Cup.
Now, when it comes to development, and I would like to go back to the qualifiers for the Rugby World Cup, the last set. There's something I saw, especially with teams from North Africa. They've got a rugby culture they've picked, you know, trapped off from France. But there's this way of attracting the players in the diaspora. We saw people who are basically French, but because their grandfather came from Algiers, they went playing at that level. How are you trying to bring in? Because there are countries in West Africa that, you know, you'd be surprised about how they're developing. Nigeria, Ghana, are countries that ideally, as former British colonies, you'd expect them to have something rubbing off, and they've got so many people living in the UK. What are you doing to attract these players back home?
Yeah, that is a major challenge. If perhaps you need to appreciate the complexities that we have, and I think it also applies to Kenya. So once the players reach a certain level, they start looking at their ability to look after themselves and their families. And the truth is that the structure at the moment that we have in Africa, basically Southern and Eastern Africa, is that we are not able, number one, to bring in the numbers that we require into the games. Number two, we are not able to charge sustainable and self-funding prices for the games that we are playing. So we now need to look at sponsorship, corporate and government. And unfortunately, they are also getting fatigued with, with trying to give us and help us in terms of this. So you end up having these players based outside the country because they can get education, they can get jobs, and they can get some contracts. Now, for us to be able to bring them back home, number one, the first thing you are told is that, can you cover the insurance? Number two, can you pick up the tab in terms of their contract, the salary? So already, it becomes so difficult for us to be able to bring in all the players that we can bring in. So there are some players who have their countries at heart, who will say, okay, I'm not too much interested in the financial aspects of things. I'm going to make myself available. Or I don't have a chance of making another country, and I'm going to make myself available so that I can get my national stripes under my belt. So that is the challenge that we are facing within Africa at the moment.
Moses, I know you've always made the attempts to reach out to, especially those who are university students outside, to bring them in. I think there was a case of Coulson. We've had others now who moved on to the US. What's been the KRU experience like compared to what is mentioned, or putting it in that context?
I think the situation is quite similar, because, of course, at a certain level, also with the kind of facilities that we have around, many players would want to go and reach out and get better contracts. They get scholarships for their education. So I would say the challenge is somewhat similar. But what we've also experienced that we've had very good patriotism from Kenyans coming back to play for us, and probably even like one of the greats, Humphrey Kayange, went and finished his studies. He came back to work back and came back to the team, and I think it's a tight balance to be able to see, can we be able to take the tabs of these players, if we can be able to create a better environment for them to pick up, their livelihoods. So that is the thin line that we face as well.
Yeah, it's also interesting from the Rugby Africa perspective, because global rugby, I don't know whether they picked this, I don't know where they picked that model from whether it's from cricket or wherever. There is the world ranking that helps in positioning. The top 20 countries already have basically a one step ahead of 3 steps ahead of everyone. How much is being done, to try and level the field? Because any country ranked between 20 and 30 should ideally be considered for, to pull them up rather than stay there. That's where Kenya, Zimbabwe, and Namibia are stuck.
Yes. No, unfortunately, as I indicated before, it's an issue of resources and structure. So for you to be able to move up and down, the log, you've got to play games. Yeah. And how do you play games? You need funding. Yeah. So and the teams that are higher ranked than us are mostly in Europe and Asia. So which means that you've got to have some sort of reciprocal arrangement with Asia and Europe, where you go and play there and they come and play here. And we, at the moment, the funding is just too difficult.
Just trying to imagine the visa and travel costs alone, even before we book a hotel.
100%.
And the 15s team, the squad of 28 is such a big crowd.
You're talking about a delegation of 40.
40,
yes.
Basically.
Including the backroom staff and everyone.
Exactly.
Yes, that's allowances plus insurance. I mean, it's a mammoth task.
Yeah.
All right, so as we wind this up, let's talk about the Under-20 trophy currently going on. From the Zimbabwe side, what's been the experience, from the 2 matches that you played so far?
Well, look, I mean, we didn't really know what to expect because we haven't played these sides since COVID. So what we've seen is that there is indeed a gap that is existing between Africa and the rest of the world, and the good thing is that the gap is not too big, and we've realized that technically we are right there with all the teams that were participating I mean, the scores, bear witness to that. The only difference, in my opinion, is the issue of game time. So you can see that most of the, for Kenya and Zimbabwe, we were struggling in the second half, and it just shows that it's game time that is lacking, in match fitness. So that's an area that we need to look at and make sure that we can improve on game time.
Kenya, the experience. Okay, I don't want to talk about the match against Spain because that second half was something else. But there were those brilliant moments when they played against Samoa and somebody said they should have picked this.
Yes. I think we were watching the game against Samoa, and honestly, we could see the way Zani is saying, the gap isn't so big. So we could see the boys really expressing themselves. We could see a Kenyan style of the game coming through. But those just fine details that you could clearly see that the other side has had more game time. Samoan players have played in the Pacific. These guys, they probably play in New Zealand, Australia. Their experience, their way, their understanding of the game is slightly better than ours. So it's just a matter of time and getting the game time, and we will get there.
Okay. Well. Playing against Hong Kong, China.
Yeah.
Like we would say in Swahili, chocha kidogo. Pump up some vibe. Tomorrow, it's going to be live on KBC Channel 1 at 12 p.m.
I think at 12 p.m., that is our chance for Kenya to shine. Hong Kong, China, we have seen the past games that they have played. We have also played the size that they have played. And I think this is the game Kenya we are going in with all our guns up. This is the game to win, and we have this. We are really looking forward to taking one win against Hong Kong, China before we make our last game.
All right, and most probably it will be against Zimbabwe on Sunday at 10 a.m. Zimbabwe against the US tomorrow. 10
that is always friendly
fire. Live on KBC Channel 1.
Yes, it's going to be a very difficult match, but I think we've learnt a lot from the two matches that we've played, and our technical teams have been busy making adjustments, and I'm very confident that we're going to give it a very good go, and we are looking at winning it. And God forbid that we play each other on Sunday.
People will have to miss a church service on Sunday, it looks like. And so we shall be keeping with that. Thank you very much. Moses Mukabane, he's the director of 15s Rugby at the Kenya Rugby Union. And also, we've got Aaron Jani. He is the treasurer, Rugby Africa, and also the president of the Zimbabwe Rugby Union. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And all the best. I know you've got a tournament to plan for tomorrow.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
All right. So Rugby, remember, tomorrow, 10 a.m. on KBC Channel 1, USA versus Zimbabwe at 12 p.m. It's going to be Chipu, that is Kenya, who are going to be playing against Hong Kong, China. The afternoon matches, you'll catch them on Y254. We take a short break.